Good morning, everybody. It's another episode of the Keep Going podcast, Athletes Shining a Light on Mental Health. I am so excited. I got Joe in the building. I got Big Dave in the building. Big Dave, where are we coming out of?
We are coming out of Colorado today.
Very nice. Very nice. How's the job? How's life, Dave?
It's good. It's good. The job is going pretty well. I got some weekend shifts still, so going into work here in a little bit, but everything is good out here. Yeah.
Love it, man. Everyone's on the grind today. And Joe, speaking of that, man, we got a couple games coming your way. Where are you at right now?
Uh, to be exact, I am on the corner of McFarland Road and Springbrook Parkway in Rockford, Illinois.
I love
Just
that,
heading to
man.
the facility. I got to grab some lineup cards, and then I got to run over to Rockford Christian for a doubleheader.
That's it, man. The life of a coach. And Coach Joe, we appreciate you taking time out of your day, man. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's football and a lot of baseball today, so I won't take too much of your time. But I guess in the train of thought of mental health, man, what have you been doing this week for your mental health? How you been feeling this week?
This week's been pretty solid. I mean, when you got a 2.5-year-old at the house, it kind of brings things back into perspective every time you walk into that door. It's like, hey, everything else that's going on really isn't as important as it seems. I get to
Right.
hang out with my little guy. I get to hang out with my future wife. Things like that always kind of put the I guess you can call the quote unquote important things into perspective, right? Hey, is the stress of what's going on at the facility really that important to me? Is it worth taking a toll on my mental for an entire week when I got two people who love me waiting at home to see me every day?
Yeah.
So I definitely do a lot of reflection as far as that goes, right? Like, hey, this is bothering me right now, or hey, this kid's struggling right now and I can't find a way to get through to him. How can I really help him? And then I just sit there and go like, all right, well, what are the really important things in life? You have a support system, you have people that love and care about you. What are you doing with them? Right? Or when you're struggling, are you blocking them out or are you talking to them? And I always think that talking to the people that love and care about you the most are the easiest way for you to get through a lot of mental struggles.
I love that, man. And that's a perspective thing. I had this conversation. We were watching the Oregon game last night, and just a perspective thing about like you can either be the victim in those situations and kind of like curl up in a ball, or you can be the strong one, right? And continue to push forward, continue to lean on your support group. There's a lot of power in that when you have that perspective. I love that. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, no doubt. I really like that perspective as well. And a lot of things that go on in our everyday life, um, you can ask yourself, like, is this in my control or out of my control? Like,
Yep.
there's a lot of things that are out of my control that may affect my mental health in a negative way. And you understand why that is. Well, I can't control that. It might help
Mm,
your mental health a little bit more as
yeah,
well. It's about
I
that
love that.
perspective.
Yeah. And I think, Joe, just to kind of piggyback off of it, do you feel like that changed? Obviously, your soon to be wife, obviously having Dom, obviously being 2+ now. Do you feel like that changed when your family came along, or do you feel like that was something you established back in high school and college? Talk about that.
Well, being Italian American, our family has always been extremely close, right?
Right.
Like talk to my mom and dad multiple times a week. Before then, when I didn't have my own family, it was multiple times a day, right? Like, yeah, there were times where mom would call me up and be like, "Hey, I haven't heard from you in a couple of days. What's going on?" But that was usually her cue to be like, "All right, maybe I should get in touch with Joe," right?
Right.
Because as we all grew up around the same time, mental health wasn't as easily talked about, right? Like I'm a
Mm.
31-year-old man now. When I was growing up, it was like, hey, you're a man, just put your head down and go, like deal with what you got to deal with on your own. But I always had my parents kind of, hey, if you want to talk, we're always here for you, right? Or hey, what's going on? I can tell it in the tone of your voice that there's something bothering you, right? So let's just talk about it. Even if it's as simple as like, hey, I didn't get a ton of sleep last night, had a rough outing tonight, and I'm just not feeling the best right now. They're always there to talk to me. So I was always lucky enough to have somebody to talk to and somebody to lean on. And I know there's people out there that don't have that luxury. What I would always suggest doing is just like, hey, I mean, even if it's a friend, right? Even if it's a coworker that you believe in or a teammate that you trust, right? Like talk to those people because we are creatures of communication, and without that, having that ability to communicate with people, we are going to go kind of a little crazy up top. We need to be able to get what's on our mind off of our mind, and bounce those ideas off of somebody else. And even if it's just somebody to listen, right? Somebody to have an ear to bend, get through those moments with like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, or this is what I'm kind of dealing with. Can I just talk to you about it? Right. And again, right, I was lucky enough to always have that in my system.
No, and I see that obviously with your family, man. A big loving Italian family, man, that loves baseball, loves food, loves good people gathering around. And that's what it's all about. And I always talk about in this podcast that, like, I would challenge people to get out of their comfort zone. Dave has been pretty animate about that too. Get out of your comfort zone and go talk to somebody. Jackie Tripp used to always say, smile at strangers, one of my favorite quotes. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, no doubt. No matter how scary it may be to have a conversation about what you are going through, people are always going to be here for you. Nobody's going to look at you differently. Like, we're all here to support each other and impact each other in a positive way. And people want to help. So don't feel so scared just to reach out to someone, because they will be there for you.
Yeah, that's it. And Dave, I know you've done a lot of that, obviously leaving the Chicagoland area, heading out to Colorado, pretty much by yourself, doing your thing. I think it's a good example for kids listening, for coaches listening, whoever's listening. Get out of that comfort zone and go find yourself and go find your people. I think that's strong. Yeah. Well, Joe, obviously a lot of student athletes, a lot of coaches listen to the podcast. So I want to transition in. When the bat got into your hand, when did the glove get in your hand? Talk about early on, Joe Filomeno, and what you were doing in the game.
So I mean, the bat and the glove have always been in my hand longer than I can actually remember. I only know the earliest stories because my dad would always talk about it, right? I was 2 years old and he was coaching my older sister's softball team. And he would go through batting practice with them, and he said that I would always get my turn at the very end, and I would always sit there and I would have that. You remember the big orange barreled wiffle ball bats?
Oh yeah, man,
like
the big daddy,
the kid bats. Yeah. So he would let me. He would say, "Go wait in the back of the line," and I would wait there with that bat on my shoulder until it was my turn, and he'd let me get my 10, 12 swings, and then everybody would flip back over. I don't remember that at all, but he'll tell that story over and over again, and it'll be the exact same. So I definitely believe it. So I would say about 2 years old is when I guess you could say the journey started for me.
Yeah, I love it. When did you know you were going to play high level baseball? I know we have a lot of athletes, a lot of coaches that are trying to figure this out. When did that light bulb kind of go off for you? And like, when did you know, okay, I'm going to play this game. It's going to be a huge part of my life.
It's actually a really good question because, I mean, as kids, and it should be like this, as kids, you're just playing a game, right? You're playing a game that you enjoy. You're having fun with your friends. You're having fun with your teammates. And it gets to a point, now it's probably that 12, 13, 14-year-old point in life where kids are like, okay, maybe I want to take this game a little bit more serious. I do remember this, right? In like second and third grade, we always had like those biography things we would do on ourselves, or autobiography things we would do. And it'd be like, my name is Joe. I am 8 years old. What I want to be when I grow up. And on every one of those things, it says professional baseball player. Now, I didn't necessarily know that I could do it at that point, but I'd be lying to you if I said that I didn't truly believe it. Now, when it came down to it and I was like, okay, I might have a shot at this, it was probably when I was my second year in travel ball. So I was 14 years old. And, I always threw harder than most guys, but I played Little League all the way until I was 12 years old. And then my first year in a travel ball, we played and I had some success. And then the following year, we started to travel a little bit more. And I was like, okay, maybe I do have some ability here to play this game at a higher level. So I remember sitting down with my dad and the coach at the time. The coach was Dave Wabick. He ran Upper
Shout out Dave. We're a big Dave podcast, as you know.
Big Dave podcast, yeah, for sure. But Dave Wabick would sit there with my dad and I, and we were sitting at Portillo's out in Orland Park, and he goes, hey, you do know that Joe probably has a pretty good shot to play this game at a high level? And my dad was like, I didn't really think anything of it besides, high school and whatnot. But yeah, that kind of flipped the switch for me, was having somebody else tell me, right? Like, you always have that belief in yourself, but hearing it from somebody else kind of gives you that extra, like, okay, I can actually do this. But he made it very clear that it wasn't going to be handed to me, and it wasn't going to be easy, and I would have to work for absolutely everything that I had. So yeah, probably around that 14-year-old year, and then, moving on into high school, when playing varsity as a freshman, and playing and pitching in the playoffs, when I was like, why am I a freshman right now pitching in varsity playoffs? But then I was like, okay, well then, I got 4 more years to make sure that I do this right, and get myself prepared for college.
No, that's beautiful, man. And I'm glad that you talked about that belief piece. One, because I love Portillo's, and two, because it just takes a spark, right? He talked about it with Terry Bana. We all know Steve Peterson here. Dave, obviously, Athletes HQ is a power pipe facility. So, like, I know what it takes. And Dave, too, when someone believes in you. Dave, you feel like that changed your career as well, man? Like Steve and other coaches stepping in?
Yeah, no doubt. I think having someone that is there for you and is believing in you is huge, because throughout my career, I've definitely had some of those moments where you just kind of have some self-doubt about yourself, and like,
Yeah.
okay, when things aren't going your way. Joe, I got a question for you. When things aren't going your way, or you might be in a bad bad pitching situation, what do you focus on? What would you tell someone that may be going through a hard time with their confidence and belief in
Love that.
themselves?
Love that.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. I really wish that I did this and I thought about this when I was actually playing, because it would have been a lot easier on myself. When I was playing, I was just like, all right, I'm going to lock myself in the gym, lock myself in the video room, and I'm going to figure this out, right? However, kind of you hit the nail on the head earlier, Dave, when you said control what you can control. As a pitcher, right? Like, I can only control the way my body moves, and I can only control the outcome. Once that ball leaves my fingertips, I have no more control. So the only thing that I could really focus on, and this is what I tell kids all the time, is do what you can do best, and that is throw the ball somewhere around the plate. And if somebody hits it, your defense is going to back you up, right? I can only control where I'm putting this ball. I can only control what sequence I'm using. I can only control my effort, my attitude in between pitches, and move forward through this game, right? I got 8 other guys out there that are doing everything they can to help me. Let me try to get them involved, right? If the slider's not working that day, well, it's going to be a hefty dose of fastballs, right? And there's going to be action for my guys out there on defense, and that's all I can control that day. If the fastball's not working, hey, I might get a couple extra strikeouts with the slider, but I'm gonna do what I need to do to make sure that I am helping my team win, and I'm controlling what I control as far as throwing the ball over the plate, being competitive, and not letting a less than satisfactory outing affect the rest of my week, the rest of my day, the rest of my inning, the rest of my at bat, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important for people to understand that if it doesn't go the way I want it to go, it's okay too. Because I know I put the preparation, I did everything I could do to prepare for the moment. And if it doesn't go the way I want it to go, that's okay too. And you learn from it. And you learn from those moments as well.
You're right. You're right. And I guess I'd ask a question B to that, right? You mentioned how you do things a little bit differently, right? Like you wouldn't lock yourself in the film room or the weight room or doing drills, whatever. You wouldn't beat yourself up for weeks to come. Anything specifically you would do? Like, if you have an athlete listening right now and you're trying to flip that switch, they give up 6, 7 runs in a couple innings, what would you tell them?
What did you do well? Right? There's always silver linings, and especially in baseball, but in all sports, there's always silver linings. Hey, the way that I approached every inning, I was prepared, right? Like, I knew what I wanted to do every inning. I said, all right, the leadoff guy is coming back up. Last time he took first pitch for a ball, I'm going to attack him with a fastball for a strike. I am going to make sure that I bury 0-2 curveballs. I'm going to make sure that I don't have any 5+ pitch at bats. I'm pitching to contact this inning, or I'm pitching to contact this batter. And find the good things that you did in the outing, even if it's 1 or 2 things, and focus on that for the future, because if you find 1 to 2 great things you did every outing for 6, 7 outings in a row, and then one day you piece all of those good things together, you make one heck of a good outing.
That's it. It's refreshing to hear you say that. Obviously, pitching at the highest level, pitching in one of the top college conferences, going and playing professionally. I think it's refreshing for our athletes and probably everyday people to hear. It's not going to be this, okay, sunshine and rainbows every day, but you can find that gratitude from it. I'm a big fan of like the gratitude journaling, the hitting notebooks, the pitching journals. Goes a long way. You can look back and say, hey, I did this really well. Let's build off it. Dave, anything there?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the wall there. I do have another question about like going through a hard time in not only in baseball but in your life. How do you check in on yourself if you don't have anyone else there for you?
That is honestly what probably a lot of people that listen to a podcast like this have that same question, right? Like, what if I don't have a support system? What if I don't have somebody that I can lean on at any time? Right. I think you can look at outward clues on what's going on, right? Like, hey, if you're typically a clean person, is your room a mess right now? Is your car a mess right now? How can you find ways to check in on yourself? Like, I mean, I was raised Catholic, so I mean, checking in with God, right? Speaking, praying, talking about God, going to church, however you can get a little bit closer to something or somebody. I think that's the way you do it, even if it is like a simple, hey, I'm going to go to church today, right? Or hey, I'm going to take a little extra time praying, or I'm going to journal, right? I'm going to look back at last month's where I was feeling pretty good, see what my journal said there, and then compare my journal from now till then and figure out what I was doing during those good times and try to implement them into today's type of environment. And yes, right. Like, yeah, you're having a great time. You went out with a buddy you haven't seen in a while and you went to go see a movie, or you went and caught some dinner, right? Maybe you can't do that, but hey, I made dinner while listening to music and it made me feel better, right? Maybe that's something you can implement into your day-to-day stuff when you're not feeling so great. There's always little things. Like, I read a book by Michael Strahan. It was called Wake Up Happy. And Strahan was big music guy, loved listening to music when he woke up. And he said that like his alarm clock was whatever favorite song he had at the time, and he wouldn't turn it off until he started singing along with the music. And he was in a better mood when he was singing along with the music. And I tried that. And don't get me wrong, like, there's only so many times you can listen to a song before it annoys you as your alarm clock. But for probably a good month straight, I woke up and I was singing and I was happy and I was singing right along to the song. And then I had to find a new song after that month because that one was played out and kind of was annoying me. But there's always ways to kind of, hey, what makes me happy? What can I do to make sure that I wake up in a good mood and carry that good mood on the rest of the day? Right? Like, people talk about all the time, and the wife yells at me all the time for not making the bed in the morning. But like, if it's a simple thing as making your bed in the morning, right? Because when you come home after a day, if your day was miserable, at least you can get into that bed and that bed is made and it's nice. I stole that from from a military speech. The guy gave a commencement somewhere. But yeah, if you want to change the world, start by making your bed.
Yep.
I love that. And a couple things come to mind. It's just so funny. Like, this is our 99th episode, and like, every time we get a baseball guy on, it reminds me of other baseball guys that have talked about this. Like, Nelson Gord talked about success leaves clues. Like, when you do things a certain way and you feel a certain way, success will always get you back to, okay, this is what I've done in the past to feel good. And we talked about Tristan Michaels, right? D1 guy, another pitcher that we've had on, and he talked about making things a little bit better. And I think you just touched on, how can I make things better and a little bit easier? Not really easy, but a little bit easier. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, asking yourself those questions, having some self-awareness and understanding how you're feeling. Are you feeling like you don't have a lot of energy right now, or are you feeling like you do have good energy? Are you happy? Check in on your emotions, write down your thoughts. And if you are in that bad place, I think it's important to, no matter how hard the change may be, it's important to do.
Yeah. I think you're playing with house money, right? Because you can't feel any worse than what you're feeling right now, right? Like, you can really say, okay, what if I do this and it gets better? Because it always gets better. And I would encourage our listeners. Well, speaking of that, I want to touch on one thing real quick, Joe, because obviously 31 years old, man. I've told you, I admire how you work with athletes. I admire that you always put your ego aside. You always come in with a modest, honest approach with the athletes in our facility. And I love you for that. But it hasn't always been that way in the game. Like everyone's got their ups and downs. We've touched about it a little bit on the podcast. Talk about your keep going moment, man. Someone that should have broke you down, but you got through.
Honestly, it's a toss up between when I hurt my back in 2016 for like the 4th time in my life. It was either that one. It was probably a culmination of that, and then the following year not being fully healthy and struggling and not having success, and then going into 2018 was healthy, but I didn't have a ton of success, and then I got released by the Rangers in early 2018, and I was living in Texas at the time, and I was like, well, my whole life is in Texas. I have a Texas ID. I have my car's registered in Texas. I had Texas license plates. I had all of these things, and I was done, right? I was like, well, what the heck am I doing now? Do I just stay out in Texas and try to find a job? Or, because in my mind, I was done with baseball, right? Like indie ball wasn't even a thought for me. Being around the game wasn't even a thought for me. I was honestly contemplating joining the military. But my parents, of course, right, my support system, they said, Joe, just come home. It's a long drive, but just come home. We'll be here for you, and we can figure it out, right? And mom and dad, they always welcome me back in with open arms at any time, right? Which is fantastic. But it really took me probably a good 2 weeks to even leave my room. I would come down for dinner, go right back upstairs, right? Go into the bathroom to shower, go right back in my room. And it was a really, really tough time, because for the better part of a decade, my whole life was to make it to the big leagues, right? And I put so much emphasis on making it to the big leagues. It kind of put blinders on me to like, dude, you're playing a game at a professional level for now parts of 4 years, and you're not even appreciative of that, right? And it really, really took me to go to an indie ball tryout to pitch for Jamie Bennett, who's the head coach or the manager of the Schaumburg Boomers. Yeah. And he told me after not throwing for 2.5 weeks, right? Like just sitting and doing nothing for 2.5 weeks, he looked at me and said, you can help us right now. Right. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I still have this ability, right? Maybe I don't, for lack of a better term, maybe I don't suck as much as I thought I did. And then we had a guy from the Kansas City T-Bones, which are now the Kansas City Monarchs in the American Association. He reached out to me and asked if I wanted to come to the Chicago Dog Stadium to throw a bullpen for them. And I ended up doing it. And I ended up signing with the guy from Kansas City, went out there and played. And honestly, independent baseball, which I said that I would never play, was the most fun I had ever playing professional baseball, right? Like, yes, we still wanted to have success. We still wanted to win. We still wanted to fight for the chance to get picked up and get back into the affiliated baseball. But at the end of the day, it was like we were playing our own little big leagues, right? The stadiums weren't big league. The pay wasn't big league. The food wasn't big league. The cities weren't big league, but the vibes were. And everybody was playing baseball at the best that they could do, and they were loving it, right? And everybody would go out after. We'd go grab dinner. We'd go grab beer. We'd go hang out. And that really, from a course of April of 2018 until September 2018, I had done a complete 180 with my life. And I was happy as all get out. Everybody that I came into contact with told me that they've never seen me as happy as I was. But sitting there, to kind of go back to your question, sitting there in my bedroom in Justice, Illinois, in my parents' new house, probably 13, 14 days after getting released and driving back from Texas, I sat there and said, this is not what I should be doing right now, right? Yeah. I either need to get a job. I either need to figure out what I'm going to do with my life outside of baseball, or I need to get back into baseball. And then it was like the next day I got that phone call. Hey, you want to come out and throw a bullpen? And I was like, all right, well then if I like it, and if I'm having a good time with it, then I'll go back to baseball.
Yeah. Can I ask you a kind of question B, and I'll pass it to Dave? Would you change anything?
Grand scheme of things, big picture, no. Little things here and there, yeah. Right? Like, would I have been so just absolutely obsessed with getting to the big leagues? No. Right? I would have been obsessed with being where my feet were, doing what I can do, controlling what I can control, and helping the current team that I was with have success, and then letting the chips fall where they may. I always had like the big picture in mind, but it was way too close that it should have been. Right? It should have been like this month, this year, this season, this team, then move on. Right? Yeah. But big picture, no, I wouldn't change a thing I did.
Yeah, I think you fall in love with the day-to-day. I think it's hard when you got that big goal and you're so damn close. Like I've never been there as a player, but I can just hear when you talk about it, like that perspective. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I love that keep going moment. Just knowing for anyone that is out there that is going through that hard time, and you're in that just like, wow, I don't know what to do with my life now, because a lot of people do go through that. It does get better. Like there is an opportunity that will come at the right time. It might take some time, but you gotta be patient, but it will come and it will get better for you. And I love that keep going moment, because you didn't quit. You took that risk. You took that opportunity that may not be where you wanted to be at with the independent league, but it ended up being one of the funnest times that you've ever had playing baseball. And it turns out to be better than you could have even imagined it being.
Yeah.
I can honestly say that if I didn't play independent baseball, there's no way I would have gotten into coaching, and there's no way I would have opened a facility.
Exactly.
No way I would have met Pat O'Malley. There's no way I would have been sitting here on this podcast right now.
Yeah. How beautiful is that? And that's exactly what I'm going in my rant of the day here. That's exactly where I was going to go into. Your rock bottom saved your career in this game.
Yeah.
How fucking awesome is that?
It's pretty wild when you think about it like that. No doubt about it.
Incredible, man. That fires me up here. 8:30. It's freezing out here in Rockford. I'm sitting here just the chills, man. That is incredible, man. And I've never really thought of it like that. And I'm proud of you for talking about that today, man. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Well, let's do this. I'm looking up at the clock. It's 8:30. The boys need their coach out there today. So what I want to do is I want to do some rapid fire questions. I'm going to start with Big Dave. We'll spin it around the horn and we'll get you out of here. All right. Go ahead, Dave.
Sounds good.
Okay, I got a new question this week.
Bring it, Dave.
If you had 2 minutes, 1 minute with someone that was stuck and wanted to change their life but didn't know how. We talked a lot about throughout the day today about being present and control what you can control and continue to keep going. What would you say to someone that wants to change their life but doesn't know how or doesn't know where to start?
Wow. I would tell them to write down. So I'm big on writing things down, right? So like write down 3 things about your life right now that you absolutely love, and then 3 things about your life that you absolutely hate.
Yeah.
And are you able to outweigh the things that you love versus the things that you hate? Or can you control the things that you love versus the things that you hate? A lot of us can control the things that we hate, right? I hate that I'm 300 pounds, right? But that's why I'm going to the weight room and I'm working out and I'm eating better, right? Like I hate that I have a hard time getting up in the morning, but I can control that by going to sleep a little bit earlier, right? There's kids, especially in high school now, that like, oh, I hate getting up in the morning. Go to sleep earlier. You can control that, right? Or I hate the way that, I hate the way my hair looks. Well, then, throw it in a bun, chop it off, do what you can do, like to make you feel better about it. But realistically, what I would tell them is just like, hey, write down the things you love about yourself or your life, and write down the things that you hate about yourself or your life. And let's weigh those things together. Let's talk about those things. Yeah. Which ones have more substance in your life. And I guarantee 99% of them, they're going to have more substance in the things that they love versus the things that they hate.
Exactly.
Yep. And your life is not over.
Right.
No. Life is not over.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I heard Bobby Witt Jr. talk about that same thing on a podcast last week. Success leaves clues, boys. Like the top of the top, tippy top are doing stuff like that every day. Love that, man. All right. I guess I got to roll with my question that's been on my mind for the last 20 minutes. You're going to Portillo's. What's your go-to order?
Oh, combo dipped. Add the mozzarella, sweet and hot peppers, cheese fries.
Easy. Shake or no shake?
Chocolate cake shake only when I'm feeling real crazy.
Playing dirty. Love it. Go ahead, Dave.
What are you most looking forward to do this week?
This week? Oh, this week, meaning I guess today's Sunday, it starts a new week. I am looking forward to working with some new athletes I haven't been able to work with before. Like Pat will tell you, we got a pretty good group of new teams that came over and some kids that we added into our teams and into our facility that we're excited to work with. So getting them in there and working with them a little bit more. I always love to see the small growths, the small gains every week, right? So whether it be at practice or whether it be at a lesson, being able to look at a kid and be like, hey, last week, this is this video of you, right? And now this week, look at your video. What looks better, right? Let's pick this apart. And then working with the new kids, right? Seeing a kid come into our doors and be like, I've never been here before. It's a little overwhelming, right? Because our facility, Pat will tell you, right? Myself, CJ, Pat, we're high energy guys. We like to talk and we're pretty loud. We usually have music playing. So when people walk in for the first time, they're kind of like, what is going on in here? And then seeing them over the course of a lesson go from somebody who is basically buttoned all the way up to then, hey, they got them first two buttons a little bit looser and they're having a good time and they're kind of expressing themselves a little bit and that sort of thing. But above all else, I'm very excited to just hang out with my kid and my future wife a little bit more on my days that aren't as busy.
Love that. I love that answer. It's like everyone's scared of the jungle until you start eating, boys. That's how it goes. I got one more for you today. Obviously, this is going to be a big Athletes HQ podcast. I've never had more parents walk up to me in the facility than this week. And that fires me up because I never thought this podcast, one, would have anybody from my facility on it, which, Joe, I appreciate you. And two, that parents would talk to me about how they're listening to this podcast with their kids. Like, Dave, I don't know if you know that, but I've had several athletes, several players, several parents wear the bracelets and come up to me this week. I'm like emotional even talking about it. The point of my question is this. What is one thing that you would tell your younger self? You're very impressionable. You have a lot of people that listen to what you have to say, Joe.
Things that I would tell my younger self. Wow. There's a lot of things going through my mind, but the one thing that sticks out the most is have more fun with what you do, right? Like, yes, there's times where you need to lock it in and focus up. There is. And we're hard on the kids in that sense a lot, but have more fun and love what you do. Love your life, whatever that may be that you love, go do it. If it's fishing, if it's hunting, if it's playing the video games, if it's hanging out with your family, if it's hanging out with, friends, like whatever it is, go do it. Love your life because you only get one life. And as a 31-year-old right now, looking back, it feels like a week and a half ago, I was 15 years old going into freshman year, going into my sophomore year, and it goes by extremely fast. So you got to have more fun.
Love that, man. What a perfect send off. Dave, you got to cap us off or what, brother?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for coming on today. You impacted me in a different way. I know you're going to impact thousands of other people out there. Thank you for coming on, sharing your story. I loved it today, and always keep going.
Yes, sir. Joe, appreciate you, man. Keep going. Good luck to the boys today, and love you and appreciate you, brother.
All right, Pat. Love you guys, man. Hey, thank you for having me, dude. I really appreciate it. I was on a podcast a couple weeks ago with Oak Strength.
Shout out Oak. Shout out Oak.
Yeah, I remember talking to Adam over there, and I was like, dude, I don't like hearing the sound of my own voice, right? Like, taking Snapchats of my son sitting there going like, oh, I don't want to hear myself talk. So I just mute it. Right. But like, I never thought I'd be on a podcast, and I've been on 2 in the last month. So
Yeah, man.
I appreciate you guys, because this is stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit, right? Like, I don't like the way that I look sitting in this car right now, right? The beard needs to be trimmed. Something needs to change. I got to have a haircut. But hey, I'm here, and I'm like you said, man, we're just gonna keep going with it.
Come as you are, baby. Come as you are, and that's an important thing. I love you guys. I appreciate you, Joe, and like I said, boys, keep going.
All right, man. We'll have a good one, guys. We'll talk to you guys soon. Anytime you
Yeah.
want me back on, just let me know.
Oh man, it's gonna be again. I promise you on that. Appreciate it, boys.
Thank you.
All right.